Well, it's divisive. It's a bit experimental. It's not the straightforward McCartney many of us would like, but McCartney is many things.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Stewart. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can get episodes commercial free, just $5 a month. You can sign up for the Backstage Pass from Patreon, and you can find the link in the show notes. You can also go to bookedonrock.com and find it there. Now on to our guest, a returning guest. Luca Perasi returns, this time to talk about Paul McCartney's 1986 album, Press to Play. The title of his book, Paul McCartney Press to Play, that unmistakable 80s sound. It's part of Lily Publishing's Milestones series. It's a series of books dedicated to classic albums in pop and rock history. Welcome back, Luca. Nice to see you again.
Thanks, Eric. I'm very happy to be back and discuss this album that was released exactly 40 years ago. So which better occasion and chance to talk about it together. I had enjoyed very much last year putting together this book and releasing it. So yeah, looking forward to have a discussion with you today.
40 years ago this summer. Before we start on this album, what do you think of Paul's new album? I had a chance to listen to it. It's very good.
It's a great album. I mean, I was invited to a listening event for the press at Universal in Milan. So I had the chance to listen to the album a couple of weeks in advance, but that was just one listen. So it's very hard after one listen to form an opinion. So I was asked to write a couple of reviews for magazines, and that was not the easiest part for me. But anyway, I enjoyed some of the songs, and others were maybe a little bit difficult to grab immediately. But anyway, I assess it very positively with 4 stars. And I've listened to it over the last week because it was out last week. And I think it's a very good album, very consistent, very nice, catchy, lots of good melodies, variety, all the hallmarks of McCartney's music you can imagine are in this album.
Yeah, you're right. I'm pretty much on the same page as you are with that. I like about a handful of songs that I really like. I've listened to it about 3 times now. I actually was I didn't think they should have led with the single. I think what they lead with, they led with Days We Left Behind. It was a little too slow, I think, for a lead single. As You Lie There might have been a great one. I think there's another one in there that I think would have been a great lead single. I think Ripples in a Pond is very Beatlesque. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they made a choice of having Paul with this very kind of nostalgic song, This We Left Behind, very atmospheric, talking about him and John. That is a great hook for promoting such an album full of memories.
Sure.
I would not call it nostalgic. It's full of memories. And I like the music. I like the ideas they put together with Andrew Watt. I mean, it's definitely a grower, as they say. But I mean, the more you listen to it, the more accustomed you are to the various songs. And so it's like having new friends, and step by step, these new friends become old friends, and you spend your time with them, enjoying your time with them, and that's what will happen with this new album, I think.
There are some classic Beatles Paul moments, as with this album, but not as much, I think, as audiences expected. I mean, that's one of the most interesting ideas that you write about in the introduction, is that Press to Play may have been misunderstood because most were expecting classic Beatles Paul or straightforward pop Paul. Why do you think the album has remained to this day, since it's come out in the summer of '86, so divisive, and what do you hope readers will hear differently after reading the book?
Well, it's divisive exactly because of what you have said now. So it's a bit experimental. It's not the straightforward McCartney. Many of us, let me say, could like, but McCartney is many things. So yeah, you can choose your own McCartney. Maybe you love more the rocker, you love more the balladeer, you love more the experimental one. So each one of us has got a favorite McCartney. Uh, in this album, it chose to do something different. So not necessarily going for the earworms and stuff. Although there are good, nice melodies, good songs, and catchy riffs. But he definitely approached the album wanting to do something different. Many magazines and newspapers at the time commented about the album having a harder edge, and definitely we know that one of the features is the co-production by Hugh Padgham. So you say, okay, it's a kind of typical 80s sound, which I mean, the title is a nod to that. Definitely, there's an 80s sound, but it was done in the 80s, so no surprise about that. And let me say that also Flowers in the Dirt, if the follower, had a definitely 80s sound. So presence of Hugh Padgham, Eric Stewart on the other side as a co-writer of many songs on the album. But there's definitely a harder edge. So some songs you can hear this, clanging guitars and stuff. I mean, heavy stuff at times. So you put together a production which was a bit different from what fans were accustomed to at the time. You put together different kind of songwriting partnership, although Eric Stewart was a really great songwriter and a Beatle fan himself. Kind of a different approach, experimental touch. You put together all these things and you have a different flavor. So it didn't met unfortunately with a great commercial success. Last thing is well, it's a divisive album still to these days, but I found many fans of this album, and I must tell you that this book of mine almost outsold my Band on the Run book. So I think it's a good sign of health is health, which I was expecting, but maybe not to this extent. So there's definitely love for this album among fans.
I became a fan of it. Never heard the album before reading the book. I'm going to admit,
Really?
never heard. No, I mean, I knew Spies Like Us, the single, which we'll talk about, but it was a brand new listen for me. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm a huge Phil Collins fan. So I really appreciate his input on this album as well, which we'll get to. That first chapter you suggest there was some confusion there between Hugh Padgham, Eric Stewart, and Paul McCartney regarding the production roles. For those who may not know, Stewart, multi-instrumentalist and producer, and Hugh Padgham, the first time I heard his name was reading it on the back of the Police Synchronicity album. That was my first album I ever bought. And he's an amazing producer. He worked with the Police, Genesis, XTC, Phil Collins, among others. So that I think, that kind of shapes the sound or the inconsistency of the album, but there are some great moments on it. Now, Spies Like Us is one, it could have been on the album, but this is very Paul, because I know we talked about this last year with Paul, where he likes to put out a standalone single separate from the album, something that had been done since back to his Beatles days. In this situation, and you covered this song in the book, it was recorded around that time. The film from 1985, starring Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, it was on there and it was played at the ending credits. And it was a big hit, number 7 on the Hot 100 here in the States, number 13 in the UK. You write that it almost feels like a bridge into the sound of Press to Play. Looking back, do you see the song as an important creative turning point for Paul, even if it's often dismissed as maybe a novelty soundtrack single?
I don't know. I mean, I like the song, especially the rockin' coda. It was done in a hurry. I mean, Paul recorded a demo over a few days, and then they had a very tight deadline to produce a song, and because they wanted to have it in the soundtrack of the film, so it was done really, really quick. And I think it was just for fun. I mean, because the project of Broad Street, the film that McCartney released in 1984, was not as successful as Paul expected. So I thought, and I put forward this this thing in the book. Maybe it was a way for Paul to have his little revenge, on the movie business and stuff, having another song linked to a movie, which wasn't quite successful, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. Spies Like Us. I mean, at least here in Italy, I can remember it was screened in quite a good number of cinemas. And so, having, I mean, another director, you work with another director, you are involved in another film. For him, maybe it was important for that aspect. Then, from a creative point of view, it's an interesting song and production. At the time, it was released in late '85. So at the time, Press to Play was still in the works, and I think to some extent it anticipates some of the sonic features of the album. So there's big, loud drums, there's electric guitars. Although it's basically Paul on his own with just Eddie Rayner on synthesizer, but it has some of the sonic features of the album. So I think it's interesting.
Can you share the story? He offered the song for free to the director, John Landis.
The story that Paul has told is that it was requested, the song. But when it comes to John Landis, it was clear in telling another completely different story. So it was Paul who phoned him and asked, okay, I got this song. It's great for your film, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, we don't really know what happened. Probably I am more inclined to think that John Landis' version is the right one. So Paul was offering his song to the director. So, but it shows us that definitely the mid '80s were not the best period for Paul in with his critics and stuff. Well, the previous album, Pipes of Peace, was not so well received. Although it had the two great hits. One was Say, we know about this, and also Pipes of Peace, which was #1 in the UK. I mean, a great video, great song. Was quite successful in commercial films, but not so much with the critics. Then there was Broad Street. So, I mean, it was the aftermath of John Lennon's death, and so the first part and the mid '80s for Paul was definitely a hard period.
That leads to the interesting question about the album itself, and there's that question: is he experimenting as an artist, or was he trying to do different things to keep up with the times? But we'll get into all of that. We'll get into the tracks now. And I was intrigued by your point that the album almost feels like it's split in two, between polished pop perfection and then deeper experimentation. Do you think that internal tension is what ultimately makes the album fascinating, even if it also made it commercially confusing?
Yeah, it is. Every Paul McCartney album has got something worth exploring. And I must tell you that, well, this was the first album I bought when I was 16 as a conscious McCartney fan, because when they bought me Press the Pipes of Peace, I was basically a Michael Jackson fan. So I was expecting my mother coming back home with a Michael Jackson album. And then she came back and it was Paul McCartney album with a couple of duets with Michael Jackson. So it took me some time to understand McCartney and to like it, to like him and to like the album. But by the time of Press to Play, I was definitely a McCartney fan. So I had enjoyed rediscovering the album last year again, and I had the chance to interview Hugh Padgham last year. So we went through the tracks together. I pointed out to him some of the effects that are in the songs. So I had dissected really this album technically, sonically, in the instrumentation and stuff. So I found an album which was way better than I remember. Even though I'm a big McCartney fan, it doesn't mean that I like all of his material 100%. So I had some reservation still about Press to Play, and I must say it's a good album. It's not as perfect as others, but really you can find interesting aspects. So yeah, there's pop, there's this typical 80s production, the effects on the drums. I mean, I discovered many nuances that I wasn't aware of by putting my headphones, going through the album again, talking with you, and I think if you approach the album without any bias, which probably was your case, Eric,
Yes,
I think you can really dig the album. You can really appreciate a lot of stuff. So there was definitely it was definitely a brave move, let me say, from Paul in trying to do an album which was different. He wanted to be different. So that is a main point for me. Okay, Hugh Padgham was a great producer and engineer, and let me point out this, because when we talk about this, misunderstanding about the production, Eric Stewart was a producer and a songwriter. Hugh Padgham, producer and engineer, so that adds to the confusion. But yeah, listen to the album and try to grab or embrace the complexity that it lies behind this album.
I found it fascinating how much attention was given to the percussion textures. You just mentioned that. Drum machines, the gated reverb, the stereo placement of effects. How much of that do you think comes from Padgham's production fingerprints versus Paul's own creative direction?
Paul was adamant in saying that Hugh Padgham was basically chosen for the drum sound. And Paul said he's very good at having a great drum sound. And so that was basically what Paul was interested in achieving. So definitely you had a great part on that. But we know that Paul experimented a lot in his career, and so is not shy to experiment and to try something different. And then there's Jerry Marotta, because I mean Jerry drummed on the whole album basically, except for a couple of tracks, and so he did contribute to this big sound a lot. So it's a combination. You for sure as the main element, the main pushing factor. Then McCartney always keen to experiment, and Jerry definitely playing at his best, I think.
The lead track, Stranglehold, was one of the album's singles. You describe it as almost a mission statement for the album's harder edge direction. And I was fascinated by the stereo diagram Paul drew for the track that's in the book. It's built around rhythm, atmosphere, and texture every bit as much as melody. Do you think it reflects Paul being influenced by contemporary artists of the time, like Peter Gabriel, Talking Heads, or even art rock production trends of the mid-'80s?
Yeah, it was definitely following all the names that you mentioned. You mentioned Peter. He was aware of Peter Gabriel. He likes Peter Gabriel. I mean, just let me a little digression. Um, they worked together just after Press to Play. They worked together, and they did a song together that was not released at the time. It was called "The Politics of Love." I don't know why. Peter said that maybe the collaboration didn't work for any reason. Maybe, when you are working with McCartney, and at some point you realize it's Paul McCartney on the other side, it could be difficult at times. But then quite recently, I think it was 2018, they found themselves again together in the studio doing things. So I hope that someday we can find some of the work that they did together. Anyway, yeah, he was definitely aware of who was riding high in the charts at the time. So Stranglehold was not a successful single, but when the album came out, it was definitely it gained a good airplay by radio stations in the US. So that seemed to foresee, okay, the album will be great, will be a great success. It didn't happen, but it's an interesting start. I mean, it's not so typical for me of McCartney's music, because when it starts with this acoustic guitars and drums, acoustic guitar and drums with no bass for the first beats. There's this whispered vocals. Then it develops and goes into a great rocker, with a powerful horn arrangement. But it's not that typical, and I think it shows there's something different in the album to come for the listener.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Track 2, Good Times Coming, Into Feel the Sun. That's followed by Talk More Talk. You describe this as the moment where Press to Play fully dives into experimentation and electronics. You point out the surreal and abstract lyrical influence of filmmakers like Buñuel and a stream of consciousness approach that Paul uses here. And it reminds me of his future project, The Fireman Sessions, which you mention in the book for a track on side 2, Pretty Little Head. Was this kind of lyrical experimentation something that Paul had always wanted to explore more deeply, and he's doing more on this album?
Oh yeah, I mean, he admitted that finally, he was free to do this kind of things, to explore. He had to admit that going into something more abstract was one of the reasons why the album was not as successful as expected. But if we put this in perspective, as you said, you mentioned The Fireman, definitely Talk More Talk and Press to Play, both smack of Fireman and experimental stuff of McCartney. So these two songs are interesting. If you, for just one moment, you forget, you want necessarily a catchy McCartney. I'm not saying that these two songs are not catchy, because there's little riffs and things that you can hum for days as well. And Talk More Talk especially was an interesting experiment, because it was done basically, as Paul said, in one day. So it's Paul with a drum machine. There's an emulator programming in the song, and he played all the instruments here. So I mean, just the crazy day he likes to have once in a while. you're recording with a band Monday to Friday, and then comes a moment that Paul said, okay, don't show up tomorrow. I want to do these things a couple of things on my own. That's an interesting approach to me, because it shows how Paul is smart in taking these decisions. I mean, you can enjoy playing with your band for an album. Then maybe you need something different. You need a different approach in the studio just for one day, and then you can go back to your working with your band. But it's an interesting thing because it adds to the variety, and so I think that's a good way to vary your material.
Phil Collins did that on a full album with Both Sides from 1993, where he did all of the instruments. But this is what separates solo Paul from Beatles Paul. These are the things that he can do now as a solo artist, and that's where you hear the difference in sound. But it's interesting now, after a track like that, when more experimental, you have Only Love Remains, which finishes out side one. More of something that longtime fans would appreciate, right? The stereo diagram, again, in the book for this, and it details just how carefully layered the arrangement was, yet the final result still feels intimate and emotional. And this was a late addition in the process. So I wonder if you think Paul realized the record needed a classic McCartney style ballad, maybe to avoid alienating the longtime fans completely, especially coming off of a track like Talk More Talk.
Definitely at some point he thought, well, maybe I'm going too far. And because this was the last song recorded for the album, so all the rest was finished. Basically, they were in the mixing process, and they basically stopped for recording this song, which, I mean, it's a big ballad. And even Paul at the time promoting the album said, well, people ask me if an album is incomplete without a ballad, and I think so. So he didn't want to having his old-time fans maybe deluded a bit or disoriented by this new approach. And so he just threw in this great song. I mean, I don't like necessarily to put labels on a song, if it's a ballad or a rocker or pop, whatever, experimental. But this is a great song, regardless of the fact that it's definitely stylistically and sonically different from all the rest of the album. There's another drummer, which was Graham Ward. It's not Jerry Marotta this time, but it's a great song. I mean, produced with all the trimmings, big orchestra. It's intimate. Yeah, I think the first minute, basically, we have just Paul, the piano, and maybe couple of backing vocals, very light. There's wine glasses played at some point during the song, and then you have the big orchestra, the big statements at the end. I think it works, and it closes side one majestically.
Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. Luca Perasi is our guest. We're getting into his book, Paul McCartney, Press to Play, that unmistakable 80s sound. Now the track I would say is my favorite. As a child of the 80s, I took to it right away. That's the song Press, kicks off side two. This was the biggest hit on the album, reached 21 in the US, 25 in the UK. And the song's inspiration coming from something as ordinary as giving Linda a massage and transforming that into this highly stylized, sensual pop track. It's packed with sequencers, drum programming, digital delays, layered guitars, studio experimentation. How much of this is Hugh Padgham? How much is this Hugh pushing Paul maybe further into modern production techniques, maybe than Paul would have gone into on his own?
Much of it is you, and if you listen to the basic track, it's kind of a rocker, very simple. If you just uh, get rid of the synthesizer and the stuff they added, and you come back and listen to the basic track, there was some unofficial recordings over the net. You can really you really have a kind of different song. I mean, it's very straightforward and stuff. Yes, it's very catchy and commercial in the final as a final product. I like it. There's great guitars part. There's a solo by Paul. Uh, Great guitars part by Carlos Alomar, which I interviewed for the book, and it was another great contribution. Having Carlos in the book was very nice because he was really able to listen to the songs with me and explaining really what he did in each of these tracks. And so again, it's interesting because in the end they started for a very basic and straightforward quasi rocker, and they turned into a I don't want to call it dance or disco, but very, very modern production, which in the end, I mean, it works because you mentioned it was quite a moderate success at the time. I mean, it charted not so high, but it stayed in the charts for quite a good number of weeks. And so I well remember in Italy at the time, also thanks to the video, it was a nice success in the charts here. So it worked. It worked because it was a good compromise between melodic, let me say, Paul, and with a modern touch. Because if you analyze a song, it's done in 4 different parts. I mean, it's not so simple as it seems. So harmonically speaking, there's 4 different parts. So again, listen to the album very carefully, guys, because there's many things of interest.
Yeah, if you pop in the earbuds too, it makes it even more of an experience. But yeah, that was released ahead of the album. So it was released in July of '86, and like you said, did very well. Carlos Alomar, famous for his work with David Bowie.
Oh yeah.
The next track was released as a single in the UK only, Pretty Little Head. You write that this may be one of the boldest experimental pieces McCartney ever released under his own name. This is where you see that connection to the Fireman sessions. Eric Stewart describes the song as emerging organically from jams rather than traditional songwriting. How unusual was that process for Paul at this stage of his career? Do you think that spontaneity is part of why this track feels so unpredictable and hypnotic, really?
Yeah, this is definitely the reason why. I mean, again, Paul likes to do something different. So that very day, he said, "Okay, I'm going to play the drums," and Jerry Marotta was on the vibes, and Eric Stewart on synthesizer keyboards. So they just switched their usual roles in the studio, and they came up with this. I mean, which is it was a jam. It was an instrumental kind of thing they had lying around for months until Paul thought it was worth adding some vocals, some melody. So that was the process. It's not that unusual. Paul likes to do this kind of things, even with Wings. Sometimes they jammed together, and something different may pop up, and that's the same thing. I mean, I think we can hear in this song a bit of Peter Gabriel's influence. I mean, it's a very percussive track, and I'm not sure if Paul played regular drums or he played the Dynacord drums, which is a digital drum that Jerry Marotta had at the time. So it could be a Dynacord. Anyway, it's very interesting because basically there are no cymbals, no crashes on the track, which was one of the trademarks of Peter Gabriel.
Yes,
especially on the album Peter Gabriel 3. So
right.
I can definitely hear that kind of influence.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had the opportunity to listen to the track, the separate tracks. If you just listen only to the drum part, there's no cymbal, no crashes throughout the whole song. So that was something that I said, okay, this is interesting. Having Jerry Marotta as a drummer, he had kind of a good input with ideas. I mean, Jerry Marotta is not only which I've interviewed again for this book. Jerry Marotta was interviewed many years ago, but is in the book with interesting quotes. And yeah, so he witnessed Paul playing the drums, and when he was asked about is Paul a good drummer, he said something. Well, sort of. I mean, the real test would be seeing Paul playing the drums live. That would be the great test. But he's a great drummer in terms of ideas. So he acknowledged that Paul has great percussive ideas, and that's one of the tracks that shows this.
He's the drummer on all the tracks on Band on the Run, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So he can play, but
no, he can play. I mean, he was just saying or referring to the fact that when you are in the studio, you can redo your parts. You can maybe add an extra fill by overdubbing, or do these kind of things. Not saying that Paul is not capable of playing, but I mean, in the live environment, it's a completely different thing, because you have to really keep the pace and the rhythm without losing a bit, you know.
Well, a perfect segue into the next track. I want to stay on the topic of drums. Phil Collins, and he's credited on one track on this album, "Angry." That's the next track. But honestly, I hear him on "Good Times Coming," "Feel the Sun." I hear him on "Talk More Talk." I hear him on the last four tracks, starting with "Pretty Little Head." He's not playing drums on that one, but I feel like that drum loop is something you'd hear on "No Jacket Required."
Mm-hmm.
That's him on the next track, "Move Over Busker." And after "Angry" is the final track, "However Absurd." That's him on the drums. I mean, I'm curious as to your thoughts. I couldn't wait to ask you this because I love Phil Collins. I'm curious as to your thoughts on where you hear him outside of his quote unquote official credit on "Angry."
Maybe I'm not that into Phil Collins as you are, so I trust it. I trust what you hear. Well, having spoken with Jerry about some of these tracks, he definitely confirmed his own presence. So I'm not aware of Phil Collins being in other tracks, because he basically was, according to what we know, he was basically in the studio for one day, because
Okay.
that's the track "Angry" was recorded 1 week after Live Aid. Okay, so the Live Aid was on the 13th of July, and so the Saturday 20 they showed up, him and
Pete
Pete
Townsend.
Townsend on guitar, and there was also Eddie Rayner on synthesizer was in the studio. And so, to my books and my information, Phil is not in any other tracks. You mentioned "Pretty Little Head" and or "Talk More Talk" and percussion. This kind of rhythms that lie behind. I know that Jerry Marotta programmed the Lindrum on "Footprints," another track on the album. So I think it was the one who was programming the Lindrum, and also Eddie Rayner did a lot of programming. I had the chance to interview Eddie Rayner quite recently, last month, and so he mentioned him programming Lindrums and emulator throughout the album. He was called in to do specifically this kind of work, and adding piano parts, synthesizer, choosing different sounds to enrich the album. So, but anyway, anything could be, Eric, because McCartney's discography is full of details that we don't really know. So that's the official thing.
Because now I'm starting to feel like I'm crazy. I'm hearing things that I'm not hearing.
No, I mean,
no, I listen to so many of Phil Collins' music that it's like I'm tuned into it. But maybe it's like confirmation bias. I think I'm hearing it.
Well, anything could be. I mean, Paul said this thing at the time that he involved Phil Collins only on one track because he didn't want to rely too much on such a big name, blah blah. But that could be an indirect confirmation that Phil is hidden somewhere and they didn't credit it in him here and there. Anything could be. Anything could be.
Yeah. What's the decision behind? Because there's a first version of Angry apparently scrapped. What do you know about that? Any insight as to why Hugh Padgham and Paul felt compelled to rebuild the track almost from scratch?
That's one of the key elements that I explain in the first chapter. So, because I didn't have the chance to interview Eric Stewart, whoever over the years he has referred many times to a production misunderstanding with Hugh Padgham. I think the production misunderstanding is not really a thing because basically what happened is that they started the sessions with Paul, Eric Stewart, and Martin Chambers on drums, and John Kelly engineering. So that was a batch of sessions that took place before Hugh Padgham came in. Then Hugh Padgham came in, is known for co-producer, not a producing on his own, and engineer. So that was a communication misunderstanding, not really a production misunderstanding per se. So during that first batch of sessions that took place in March 1985, while the sessions with Hugh Padgham started in April 1985, they recorded a first version of Angry, but at some point they decided to redo the basic track, just because maybe Paul wanted to have one track with Pete Townsend and Phil Collins, and he thought that was the track they could work on. So they just retained the backing vocals. They retained the original backing vocals, but all the rest was redone. Yeah, probably suggestion of Hugh Padgham. I don't know. I'm quite sure that Paul had a strong interest in recording something with Phil Collins. Phil Collins at some point, I mean, 2 or 3 years before Press to Play, there was a couple of articles in the press saying that Phil Collins was supposed to be joining Wings. I mean, because they knew that we're without a drummer again. That was 1981 or 1982.
Wow. Okay.
So at the time, I think they discussed it with George Martin about involving Phil Collins, blah blah. But there was another interesting thing that I was able to discover, and you find it in the book, without spoiling too much again. But since we're talking about Phil, I think it's interesting to mention this. And at some point, Phil said, "Okay, Paul still got it. I mean, it's a great artist, and I would like to produce him." So it was suggesting himself kind of a producer for Paul McCartney, and it didn't happen. But I mean, there was something definitely behind the scenes and context between Paul and Phil Collins, because I mean, Phil Collins around mid 80s, Phil Collins was the drummer. We all know that.
Yeah.
So to come back to your question, I mean, it could be that there's some hidden credits here and there. So I won't rule it out.
The Booked on Rock podcast is part of the Boneless Podcasting Network. If you're a fan of classic rock and classic film like I am, go to boneless.lovable.app to find over 20 great shows there. That's boneless.lovable.app, or just go to bookedonrock.com, the Boneless Podcasting Network. It is what you want it to be. Listen with confidence. Well, one last note on Angry. The lyrics are interesting because it's a side of Paul that it's not in line with that charming, positive public persona, right? I mean, the opening lyric, and this is in the book as well, you reveal this, that it's taken from a real conversation with Eric Stewart. The quote, "What the hell gives you the right to tell me what to do with my life?" is what Paul said. Do you think that line gives us one of those rare moments where Paul drops that charming public persona and sounds a little wounded, a little frustrated?
It is one of those rare moments. In the end, and he admitted this. I mean, I don't like to say things when I got the man speaking himself about it. I mean, and McCartney admitted this track, it's in his opinion, is not really successful because he said, "I'm not that good at expressing anger. So I think I tried, but I don't think in the end it works very well as I would have hoped." So that's his assessment of the song. I think there's a remix of this song. I don't know if you have checked it out, Eric, but there's a remix version with an added horn section. If you listen to this, I mean, it's one of the best tracks, rocking tracks I've ever heard from Paul. I mean, the mix is a bit different. They mix the drums even higher, and the bass is also higher in the mix. So check out the remix version, Eric, because that is really a great one, which I think it would have deserved to be on the album, but at some point, Paul decided to remix a lot of the tracks on the album. Maybe he wasn't so fully satisfied of some choices, and it was very undecided at the time. So I think this is testifies to the difficult moment that he went through at the time.
There are two different formats of this, depending on which you purchased at the time, the LP or later the CD. The book gets into all of that as well. And it mentions that contemporary reviews only discuss that 10-track vinyl version. Do you think some critics may have missed some key context because they never heard the complete CD running order? When did the CD version come out, by the way?
The CD came out at the same time as the vinyl and the cassette.
Because CDs were very rare in
well, and I tell you
time.
that I bought the LP. I thought I had at the time already a CD player, but I didn't discover there was a CD version with 3 extra tracks until 6 months later. But it was definitely released in 1986. But the official version maybe at the time was considered the vinyl, because the vinyl was still CD was quite common, but I think the vinyl was still considered the official release. So the critics only reviewed the vinyl with the 10 tracks. No one mentions the other 3 tracks.
And did the cassette version match the vinyl version?
The cassette was 10 tracks, so It matched the vinyl. Yeah. I had all 3 formats at the time.
Wow. Any standout tracks from those sessions that aren't on the LP version that stand out for you?
Well, to me, the 3 extra tracks that were on the CD, so It's Not True, Thoughtful on Tightrope, and Right Away, are really great tracks. I think if I have to choose just one of the 3, maybe it would be Right Away, because there's a jazzy kind of influence on this track. There's a incredible piano solo by Eddie Rayner, and that's a track that I think would have deserved to be on the main vinyl version to me.
Right away, but that's not RIGHT. It's WRITE.
Right away.
Yeah, right away.
Right.
Okay. The album cover, interesting. George Hurrell, who photographed legends like Greta Garbo and Humphrey Bogart, took the photo of Paul and Linda. It's an ironic cover, knowing the music is, it's a visual style associated with Hollywood's golden age. For an album that's obsessed with the mid-'80s modern sounds and cutting-edge production, it's interesting to see that. If Paul had chosen a more contemporary, edgy, distinctly 80s visual presentation, where listeners and critics might have approached the album differently before dropping the needle on it or pressing play on the cassette or CD.
Yeah, to some extent, we always expect that the cover reflects the content of an LP, of an album. This is not the case. Although, let me point out this. I mean, there's a glossy perfection on press to play, musically speaking, and there's definitely a glossy perfection in the album cover. So that's the common trait between the cover and the music. But definitely, it could be a bit misleading if it makes sense. I mean, myself as a young buyer of the album, definitely based on the cover, I was expecting some more classic, I don't know if it makes sense again, McCartney, and then I discovered there was a different sonic word in the grooves of the album. But I mean, it's a nice contrast, and it's again typical of McCartney. The opposites, the Gemini thing that he always or often refers to.
Yeah, most critics like the album thanks to the unconventional sound. Some found it boring, was the word. It failed to make the top 20 in the US. It did peak at number 8 in the UK, achieved gold status in September of 86. For somebody listening or watching this interview now who has always dismissed press to play as a weak point in Paul's catalog, what's the one argument you'd make for why they should give it another serious listen today?
Well, if you think that Paul McCartney is an artist capable to do 90% of things, you're wrong. He can do 100% of different things. And this album is definitely could change your perspective on this artist. It could do lots of different things and brave moves. So if you want to have a glimpse of McCartney in the 80s, very typical, but very interesting, with a variety of sounds, variety of ideas, experimental stuff. This is the album you have to go for.
Thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock podcast. If you've just found the podcast, welcome. If you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. And make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and let people know about Booked on Rock. And if you do like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, give a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Booked on Rock podcast. We're on Amazon, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, and on YouTube Music. You can check out the full episodes on video, along with video highlights from episodes, on the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. Find it at Booked on Rock. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. Paul McCartney, Press to Play, that unmistakable 80s sound. It is out now. It's been out for about a year. When did you say the book originally came out?
The book was released on the 4th of June, 2025. So it's just 1 year.
Yep.
And I mean, this is selling well, as I was telling it. There's lots of interviews done by myself in. So Carlos Salomon, Jerry Marotta, Hugh Padgham, other people. So that helps readers to have a great perspective on the album from the inside.
You can find it wherever books are sold. Another one we're going to talk about eventually is Wings London Town. So we're going to get to this one soon, hopefully within the next few months. Another one that we're going to be covering And I'm going to be doing this interview next week with Alfredo Marziano, also an excellent book. It's on XTC's Skylarking. And that is a fantastic job that Alfredo did with the book. And I don't know XTC beyond the singles, and I'm a fan of XTC. Everything that I've heard, I mean, Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead was a song I remember. Actually, Mayor of Simpleton was the first time I ever heard XTC. That was in '89. That was on the radio all the time here in the US. So looking very much forward to it, but it's a great series from Lily Publishing. So where can people go to get more of these books? They can go right to your website, right?
I got a website, which is lilypublishing.com, where you can find all the series, and there's also a page dedicated to upcoming titles, so you can discover a little bit of what's coming. And I can mention one of the next titles will be on All Stewart's Year of the Cat, which I'm writing with Andrea Grasso, with which I wrote the Elton John book. So at some point before the end of the year, we will have this inside story of Year of the Cat, again with many interviews of musicians and people who took part to the recordings of the album, and that's another great one.
Great, yeah. That you were on for the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album. That was the book that you wrote.
We did a Goodbye Yellow Brick Road together with Andrea. So I mean, we're building with these authors a nice series. I'm happy that you like it, and takes time if you want to do it properly. Takes time because you have to be the right authors and stuff. Will be dedicated to famous albums, but also albums that were a bit overlooked or need to be rediscovered.
That's so what I love.
That would be more interesting instead of doing all the classics and stuff. So let's go in depth and do something different.
Luca, people can find you online. You're on Facebook. I know we're friends on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. And I'm about to launch my YouTube channel, which will be dedicated to McCartney songs. It will be dedicated only to McCartney songs. So the YouTube channel already exists, and it's called Music is Ideas, Paul McCartney, Music is Ideas, the stories behind the songs. And I will deal with one song at a time, with a different guest each time from Paul's catalog. So far, I've launched it with a special video with Andy Nicholas, a guy I know since quite a while, and it was dedicated to my listening event to the Boys of Dungeon Lane. So I basically went through the tracks of Paul McCartney's new album and described the songs and my initial feelings to the songs. And that was a way to launch the channel. But I mean, I'm building it, and step by step, I will have interviews with musicians, all dedicated to the songs and the records of Paul McCartney.
Oh, fantastic. I see it here. So people can look for, I'll put the link in the show notes, but look up, it's at Paul McCartney Music is Ideas.
Yeah.
That's the YouTube channel. I'm seeing it here. The Boys of Dungeon Lane listening party. Got that up there. Cool. Okay. I've just subscribed. You've got me as a subscriber.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm in. Luca, thanks, man. And I'm looking forward to having you back on again soon. We'll cover that London Town book. I'm looking very much forward to this one as well, because it's another album that I have not listened to from start to finish. I just know a few of the tracks off there.
Great. Thank you very much for this conversation.
That's it. It's in the books.